Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our Tuesday, September 5th, 2023 Clay County Planning and Zoning meeting. We have a few housekeeping rules, please. Tonight, we will hear 4 cases. We will begin with a report from the Planning and Zoning staff that will summarize each case prior to any discussion the board members may have. We will then ask the applicant to step up to the podium and to ask or answer any questions and present support of their application. We ask the applicant to begin by stating their name and address for the record, as these meetings are recorded. We will then ask for any public participation that may support the case being heard, and then anyone that may oppose the case being heard. Again, asking any participant to begin by stating their name and address. And please remember the topic of discussion needs to remain pertinent to the case being heard. The purpose of the Planning and Zoning Board is to hear the cases and make recommendations to the Clay County Commission. The Commission will review and decide the cases heard tonight on September 14th, 2023 at 6 p.m. in this room. Can we begin tonight with a roll call of attendance?
Yes, Chairman. Mark Beggs. David Rodas.
Present.
Brad Scarlett.
Present.
Jerry Nolte.
Here.
Mike Brinkley.
Present.
Terry Griffin.
Present.
And Randall Morris. Chairman Tom Decker.
Present. Okay, we've got a little catching up to do on our minutes. I'd call for a motion to approve the minutes of July 11th meeting as presented.
And Chairman, you can do both together if you wish.
All right, very well. I would call for a motion to approve the minutes of our July 11th meeting and the minutes of our August 1st meeting as presented.
Move to approve.
Very well. Do we have a second?
Second.
Very well. Could I have a roll call vote?
David Rodas.
Yes.
Brad Scarlett.
Yes.
Jerry Nolte.
Yes.
Mike Brinkley.
Yes.
Terry Griffin.
Yes.
Randall Morris.
Yes.
Chairman Tom Decker.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Very well. The first case we will hear tonight is case number September 23-144 RZ/P. And could we have a staff report, please?
Chairman, I'd like to add this staff report as part of the official record.
So be it.
All right, so this is the proposed subdivision of Maloney Meadows. Currently, the property sits at roughly 192 acres, zoned agricultural, and has an existing house and access from Nation Road and 188th. The proposal is to split 85 acres off of the 192 and subdivide it into 5 lots. Lots 1 through 3 will be 10 acres in zoned residential rural. Only lots 2 and 3 will have an agricultural land preservation because lot 1 has an existing house that meets the homestead dwelling exception of the 2008 comprehensive plan. The front 3 lots will be accessed from, all these lots will have an access from Nation Road. Lots 2 and 3 will have a shared driveway. Lots 1 and 4 and 5 will have a shared access easement. And lots 4 and 5 would both roughly be 27 acres and continue to remain zoned ag. It's important to note that with any subdivision that is 5 or more lots, we require that an interior street would be installed or that the highway administrator is able to grant an exemption to the interior street and request improvements to the road. For this case, the highway department is requesting the developer to micro seal and stripe approximately 0.8 miles of Nation Road from northeast 188th to northeast 188th Street to northeast 181st Street. Staff has also met with the developer, the highway department, and the adjoining property owner to the north to discuss access easement for lots 4 and 5. The developer and adjoining property owner agreed on moving the easement further south. Staff in the highway department were okay with this change. And just to kind of give you an idea, on the screen there is kind of the rough estimate where the initial shared driveway was going to be. The agreement was to move it to where this yellow one is, and you know, on the plat it's going to show that red would be gone, obviously, but that's where that new shared driveway would be accessed from. This proposal falls under the rural low density tier of the 2008 comprehensive plan, which allows for 1 unit per 20 acres, or an exception to those 20 acres being 5+ acres with an agricultural land preservation. So staff believes that the applicant has met that. And also on your screen there is a standard rezoning criteria that we go over with all of our rezoning cases. This is the surrounding area. You can kind of see in that yellow outlined area, it's a little bit harder to see on the screen there, but that's the part we're subdividing off the 192 acres. The rest is going to remain unplatted, and just because it's over 40 acres and it has over 100 foot of road frontage there off northeast 188th Street. Staff has received multiple phone calls leading up to the planning and zoning meeting with questions regarding the project. With all of our rezoning cases, we publish this case in a newspaper, post a rezoning sign on site, and send certified letters with any property within 1,000 feet. We send a total of 41 for this one. We've received no objections from outside agencies, and they have given their approval, and staff is recommending approval with 5 conditions. And some of those are including changes to recording copies of the plat, NRCS pond inspections, and the road improvements as well. Staff would be happy to answer any questions commissioners might have, and the applicants are also present.
All right, thank you, Shane. Do any of the board members have questions for staff? Okay, with none?
I
Thank
have
you.
one question.
I'm sorry?
I have one question. On the corrected driveway easement or access easement, that needs, the highway department would like to have that easement extend completely to the west property line rather than just to the property line of Lot 5, but all the way across to the west property line of Lot 5.
Yeah, okay, yeah, I apologize.
Okay.
We do have that as part of the conditions on
Okay.
the changes to recording copies of the plat.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Right, any other questions for staff? Right, thank you, Shane. If the applicants or the applicant's representative is present, step up to the podium, state your name and address, please.
Robert Parks with Wise Kirk and Parks Engineers in Independence, Missouri. And we're the engineers for the applicant.
Mr. Parks, do you understand the staff's report and the conditions that they're considering to attach to the?
Yes,
Kind of
we
plan approval?
understand and we agree with all the conditions.
All right, very well. Do any of the board members have questions for the applicant? Nope. Okay, with none, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Yep. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to comment on the case being heard that supports the case?
Oh, wait a second. My name is Brian Goffridge. I live at 18404 Nation Road. My wife and I bought that property 21 years ago. We raised 3 boys on that place. I
So
want to thank the
do you
neighbors
live-
actually listened to me and understood where we're going with this. I have no problem with what Preston's wanting to do with that property. I think that's fine as far as developing it. We knew it was going to happen. I'm liking the fact that it's in larger acre lots. My biggest concern was that easement road. You know, I think in the future, when we design and engineer things like that, and I hope you guys will listen to this because I know there's going to be more development in that area, but there's no reason for an access road to go next to property that's already developed. I don't understand the thought of that. You know, it's property that's already been set up. People have actually spent their lives taking care of their own property. And for somebody to come in and do something like that and be an engineer was an absolute disgrace.
Well, I think the applicant and the engineer have agreed to relocate the
He is.
driveway
yes.
easement to the common
just-
property line between lots 1 and 2.
You're right, Mr.
Yeah,
Decker.
yeah.
I understand that.
Yeah.
My point isn't what's been taken care of now.
Yeah.
I'm talking about future,
Yep.
okay?
Yep.
If we're gonna have properties like that developed, we need to think about that in the future.
I presume you live in the property just to the north, is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we're in agreement. I can live with that. My neighbors, I think everybody's happy with what's going on. It's not going against anybody else's property. The size of the properties, I guess my biggest concern is just the covenant as far as, I'm not sure what we've decided as far as square footage that's recommended on housing development out there. I don't know if there's anything
I think a lot of those details are addressed rather specifically in the land development code, and
Okay.
that's public information. You can find that on the internet.
Okay, all right. I've got no other complaints, no other questions, no other concerns.
Well,
All
I'm
right.
glad everyone was able to work it out and find peace, so thank you. Yep.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else in the audience who'd like to comment that supports the case being heard? Is there anyone in the audience that would like to comment that opposes the case being heard? With none, is there any additional discussion that the board would like to have? So, I feel like the applicant has done his diligence and met the requirements of the P&Z and the Land Development Code. So I would call for a motion to approve the rezoning of Maloney Meadow. Can I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Very well. Do we have a second?
Second.
Very well. Could I have a roll call vote?
Brad Scarlett,
Yes.
Randall Morris,
Yes.
David Rotis,
Yes.
Jerry Nolte,
Yes.
Mike Brinkley,
Yes.
Terry Griffin,
Yes,
and Chairman Tom Decker.
Yes.
Motion carries.
I think we can roll right into the preliminary plat. To call for a motion to approve the preliminary plat with the conditions in Exhibit A attached as part of the approval process.
Motion to approve with conditions.
Very well. Do we have a second?
Second.
Very well. Do we have a roll call vote?
Brad Scarlett,
Yes.
Randall Morris,
Yes.
David Rotis,
Yes.
Jerry Nolte,
Yes.
Mike Brinkley,
Yes.
Terry Griffin,
yes,
Chairman Tom Decker.
Yes.
Motion carries.
The second case we'll hear this evening is case number September 23-145F. And could we have a staff report, please?
Yes, Chairman, I'd like the staff report as part of the official record.
So be it.
All right, so this is the final plat for Maloney Meadow. Staff believes that the final plat is compliant with the approved preliminary plat, and it meets the section of the code 151-3.6D, and staff recommends approval with the 5 conditions. Staff would be happy to answer any questions the commissioners may have, and the applicant is present.
All right, thank you, Shane. Do any of the board members have questions for staff? All right, thank you. With none, would the applicant or the applicant's representatives step up to the podium, please? State your name and address.
Robert Parks with Wise Kirk and Parks Engineers in Independence, Missouri. We're the engineers for the project.
And Robert, you understand and agree with the staff's report and the conditions that they're attaching?
We do.
Yep. All right. Do any of the board members have questions for the applicant? All right. Thank you, sir.
Thanks.
Yep. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to comment that supports the case being heard? With none, is there anyone in the audience that would like to comment that opposes the case being heard? With none and with no additional discussion from the board, I would call for a motion to approve the final plat of Maloney Meadow with the conditions attached, set out in Exhibit A.
Motion to approve with conditions?
Very well, do we have a second?
Second.
Very well, do we have a roll call vote?
Brad Scarlett,
Yes.
David Rotis,
Yes.
Jerry Nolte,
Yes.
Mike Brinkley,
Yes.
Terry Griffin,
Yes.
Randall Morris,
Yes.
Chairman Tom Decker.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Are we having a party out in the hallway, I guess? or-
Yeah. If it gets worse,
All
we'll
right,
say something.
all right. The third case we'll hear this evening is case number February 23-114A. And could we have a staff's report, please?
Yes, Chairman would like to add the staff report as part of the official record.
So be it.
So this is the Planning and Zoning Commission bylaws. We initially heard these in like February, March, and that's when we started making the changes following the new statutes. And the commission at that point decided to basically continue this until the LDC amendments were revisited. So what this does, there's not major changes to the bylaws. It basically updates, puts in the new state statutes that we're following. It's going to align it with the new Land Development Code amendments. And it's removing some sections that we don't think are required anymore. There's a section that talked about having 2 meetings a month. Now, if you all want to have 2 meetings a month, we could visit that, but I don't think that's needed because we're doing our rezoning preliminary final all together. There was a section about staff contacting the applicant. That's just standard procedure. Didn't feel like it needed to be in the bylaws. There was a section about putting final plats on the consent agenda, but I think it works well the way we do it now. And there was a section on the county commission, commissioners being able to attend and just observe, but since our statutes have changed and we have the presiding commissioner on there, we felt it was reasonable to delete that section. And then maybe the biggest change is we're proposing to move the meeting times from 6:30 to 6. Our reasoning is sometimes when we get started at 6:30, especially, the meeting we had a few months ago, it was 10:30 before we got out of here. So I think that half an hour would help if you all think that doesn't rush you too much to get here. I know the staff report says staff is recommending approval, but Terry Griffin brought up a good point under section, I think it was under the general rules section, where it says, number 4, commissioners shall not discuss a pending agenda item with the public at other than a public meeting scheduled by the Planning and Zoning Commission. That obviously does not work with her job description because she needs to be able to meet and discuss the cases. So staff is going to work with county council on adding to this to protect her position. Can you ask them to protect her position? So our recommendation at this point, yeah, I feel like that. I feel like throwing something. Our recommendation at this point would be to continue this till next month, have all the members review it. If you catch something like that you think needs to be changed, contact staff within the next 2 to 3 weeks. We'll add it to the revised bylaws for next week's meeting, and then you can vote to approve or disapprove at next month's meeting. And again, this item does not go to county commission. This is just approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission. With that being said, I'd be happy to answer any questions the commissioners have.
Well, Kip, I read through it, and I think your proposed changes are right on. Kind of brings us more into the protocol that I've been on here nearly 9 years, and we're kind of paralleling the protocol. And Andy's done a good job to make sure we've been following the bylaws. And if the biggest change we need to make is to show up 30 minutes earlier, I think we can handle that. So.
I'm old. It gets past my bedtime sometimes.
So if you'd like to, so you're recommending to table this to give the board a little more time to go through it and digest it?
Yes, because we've got to make that one change that Terry brought up, and I appreciate her bringing that up. And then that'll give you all more time to look at it. And if you have changes, contact us.
Would that item number 4, general requirements, would that impact the commissioner that we have, the county commissioner that's on our board?
Yeah, that's also why I want to look at it, because it may, yes.
Okay. Okay. Do any of the board members have any questions for staff regarding the case being heard? With none, is there anyone in the audience that would like to comment that supports the case being heard? With none, is there anyone in the audience that would like to comment that opposes the case being heard? With none, I would move to parallel staff's recommendation would be to table the update to the Planning and Zoning Commission bylaws. So minor changes can be made and we can hear it at our next meeting. Have a motion to table, please.
Motion table.
Very well. Do we have a second?
Second.
Very well. Do you have a roll call vote?
David Rotis.
Yes.
Brad Scarlett.
Yes.
Jerry Nolte.
Yes.
Mike Brinkley.
Yes.
Terry Griffin.
Yes.
Randall Morris.
Yes.
And Chairman Tom Decker.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, the fourth case we will hear this evening is case number June 23-136A. And could we have a staff report, please?
Yes, Chairman, would like to add the staff report as part of the official record.
So be it.
Okay, so this is the Land Development Code amendments again, these align the LDC with the state statutes that we're following currently for the first-class counties. And this basically redoes our process in a couple different areas. And it also cleans up certain sections of the code. So I'm just going to give you a brief summary of, there's just a couple minor changes from what I presented last month. Right now, the Planning and Zoning Commission is aware, we basically have two processes. We have a minor subdivision and a major subdivision. Like cases like tonight was considered basically a minor subdivision where we take the rezoning, preliminary, and final all through at one time. If it's a major subdivision with interior streets, it goes through that process twice. So that's the biggest difference in our cases at this point. But with the new state statutes we're following, it allows us to create an administrative process if we choose to. So what staff is proposing is an administrative process that would be for some smaller developments that would be approved by staff. As it's currently written, those would be subdivisions that create 2 or fewer lots on the plat and or are those lot line adjustments that we see every once in a while where no new lots are created. Because currently those cases now have to go through the full process. With this amendment, it would be approved by staff. We would still send out letters to neighbors, have a waiting period to get comments from neighbors, but if it met all the requirements, then staff could approve. Then the next step, or the next step up, would be what we're going to call minor development. And that would be for development with no internal streets. So it would be like the 5-lot subdivision today, because the 5-lot subdivision was too big to go through the administrative process because it had too many lots, and the minor development would go just to the Planning and Zoning Commission. So again, no internal streets. There could not be commercial or industrial zoning as part of either of these two processes. Because in staff's opinion, any kind of commercial or industrial zoning should be approved by the county commission. So anything without interior streets would come to the Planning and Zoning Commission for final approval. However, there is an appeal process for each of these. So if staff makes a decision and either the applicant or the neighbors disagree with it, there is a process for them to follow to kick it up to the next level. So if Planning and Zoning votes on like a case like tonight and the adjacent property owners disagree and they meet the requirements to appeal it, then it would be kicked up to county commission for final determination. So that would be the second process. Third process would be the major development. That's anything with interior streets. It would basically follow our current process, reviewed by staff, go to Planning and Zoning Commission, then to County Commission. But the biggest change with this one is instead of going back through that process a second time, staff could approve that final plat if it matches the preliminary plat. So in staff's opinion, there's no reason to go back in front of public meetings if everything the Planning and Zoning Commission approved and the County Commission approved is exactly the same on that final plat. So it kind of streamlines that case, those types of cases as well, which we don't get too many of those. So just a little bit of additional information. Conditional use permits would still go through the regular process, Planning and Zoning Commission and County Commission, unless they were renewals with no significant changes and with no substantiated code violations. Staff could approve them if they met those criteria. This also amends the BZA to 3 county commissioners, which aligns with state statute, changes certified mail to regular mail. The biggest changes, or really the biggest change from last month to this month is after meeting with county council, we cannot get rid of the publishing the cases in the newspaper, even though I would love to do that. The state statute still requires that. Nobody looks at the newspapers, but we have to follow the state statute, so that's still going to stay the way it is. However, we did amend the code a little bit to say that public notice is only required if the state statutes require it. So if the state statutes ever change, then we don't have to amend the LDC to not have to do that. But I can't stress enough that if staff makes a decision, Planning and Zoning makes a decision, or County Commission makes a decision, there is an appeal process to all of those decisions that have been made. That's a really quick version of probably 70 pages. Staff is recommending approval. I will announce that if the board votes to move this along tonight, this will not go to the September 14th County Commission meeting. That's not enough time for us to turn it around. So if there's folks in the audience or watching, they'll need to check with the Planning and Zoning Department to get a date if they're interested in this case. And I would be happy to answer any questions the board members have.
All right. Well, thank you, Kip. This is a lot of information to digest. I did read through it. I think you're doing a good job to kind of streamline some of the simple or the no-brainer applications and not tie up the county commission and relieve some responsibility of the P&Z at the same time, their board members. So, do any of the board members have questions for staff regarding the case being heard? Yes, sir.
Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Can you go through the appeal process specifically for the administrative items? If somebody is only going through that portion, but we have neighbors who send in a concern as we had tonight, how is that process known, being known to citizens?
So we would still send a letter to everybody that owns property within 1,000 feet of the proposed change. We're going to have to come up with a new letter for this process because we don't have it. My initial thoughts is we would include in there what that appeal process is. We would ask for comments from them by a certain date and then tell them they would have to appeal by a certain date if they're aggrieved by the administrative decision. The way the code's written, it gives them 7 days from when that decision is published, and that would be published on the Planning and Zoning website, to get 30% of that 1,000-foot property list to sign basically a petition saying they've been aggrieved by that decision. And if they did that, submitted it within the 7 days, then it would get kicked up to the Planning and Zoning Commission. And we took that 30% of the 1,000 feet out of the state statutes. That's how we came, that wording is in the state statutes for a different appeal process. And the reason we did 7 days for the adjacent property owners is we don't want to hold up the recording of the plat too long. And we did 7 days for if they're appealing Planning and Zoning Commission too, because you can see like tonight's case is getting sent to County Commission next Thursday. So that's how quickly we turn it around. So I couldn't give too much more time than that because depending on what level they're going, it would already be recorded or would be kicked up to County Commission, if that makes sense. Did that answer your question?
I think so. Is that also the same process if it goes to the commissioner, the planning and zoning commissioners, but does not have to go to the county commissioners? So that same appeals process would work for that as well?
Yes, the 7 days for the opposition, and the way it's written now, it gives 30 days for the applicant if staff, Planning and Zoning Commission amend or deny. So if you add a condition that they don't agree with, then they could appeal that to County Commission. They have 30 days, just because that's a standard review or appeal currently in our code. If you appeal County Commission, you have 30 days to do that to Circuit Court.
And we don't have that written yet?
I'm sorry,
We don't have that process written yet?
for the Circuit Court?
No, for the appeals process. Do you have that written and submitted in here?
Yes, that's in there.
Okay,
That's in there for each process.
okay.
Very well. I think Mr. Nolte had a question for staff, please.
Yeah, well, first off, I want to say how much I appreciate streamlining this. As you're aware, the county's portion of this process has been streamlined over the first 6 months of our new commission. And I want to say that I especially appreciate the thoughtfulness you put into this and the time it took to really research it. I guess my question is more one of process, and that is there are a number of first-class charter counties in the state, not a lot, obviously. How much were you able to draw from their experiences? And it feels like some of this stuff is rather innovative that you guys came up with, and I don't need to have a point by point, but I just want to kind of get a flavor for it.
No, so that's a very good question. So we did look at the other first-class charter counties, and I feel like this is a blend of the counties that are giving a lot of leeway and some that aren't really giving any leeway, and they follow our normal process. So like, just to give you, for instance, St. Charles County does not send any planning and zoning cases to the county commission. I think that's a little over the top for us, especially from where we're coming from. So that's kind of part of the reason we landed on the place that we landed on. There's a county, and I'm going to mix up the county names, but another county we looked at basically followed our current procedures where everything went to Planning and Zoning Commission and County Commission, and they hadn't changed to create an administrative process. So I think this document would kind of get us in the middle where we're streamlining some, but there's that appeal process. And if it's what we would consider controversial cases like interior streets or conditional use permits, those are still going to run the full gamut of Planning and Zoning Commission and County Commission.
I kind of go for the Goldilocks method of not too hot, not too cold, just right. And it feels like that's what we have here. The other thing I think that helps to do is it makes it easier if in the future we want to contemplate any tweaking, any slight adjustments. By being in the middle, you can see sort of how each option plays out. And so I think it makes how we may go forward with any additional changes certainly a lot easier process. I really appreciate what you guys did here. And like I say, I think you took the appropriate amount of time to do this. One of the things that concerns me, especially about these issues, is when change comes a bit too quickly. And so having it thought through as carefully as it seems to have been makes me feel very comfortable with the process. So thank you.
Well, I appreciate it. I have a good staff. I appreciate the county council helping me with this as well. So I think it's been a good process, and I appreciate the input from the commissioners. And I wouldn't be surprised if I don't come back before you tweaking something, because we'll have to see how it works, and we'll probably have some changes at some point.
So the next step would be if P&Z board approves this tonight, it would go October, November before the county commission.
Yeah, my guess is probably sometime in October to give us enough time to get it in the format they want it.
Would this blend into the updated 2011 LDC that's being worked on at present time, or is this kind of a standalone project?
Well, this is a standalone project. However, I will have an announcement later about the comp plan. But I would guess, so we have started a complete overhaul. Now, we're not very far, a complete overhaul of the land development code, but we're kind of waiting for the comp plan to be completed before we officially really kick that off. So I would expect maybe 2025 to be back in front of you, God willing, if I'm still here, with a complete overhaul of the land development code, if this one doesn't kill me first.
Okay. Understood. Do any other board members have questions for staff?
I have a question with regard to the appeals process. If somebody who's opposed to a decision, a neighbor, needs to come up with 30% of the property owners within 1,000 feet, how are they going to get a list of those people so they know what constitutes 30%? Are you going to provide that for them?
Yes, that is part of the public record, and we would gladly provide that for them.
Okay.
All right, any other comments, questions for staff from the board members? All right, thank you, Kip. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to comment on the case being heard that supports the application?
Nick Effenheim, 10705 County Road H. I support this. The only question I have is that the 30% within 1,000 feet, right? We still have some pretty rural areas in Clay County. And in the event that there's 2 neighbors within 1,000 feet, or even 3 neighbors within 1,000 feet, it feels to me like there might need to be some additional language there for a threshold where there's not necessarily a large number of adjacent neighbors. That's my only comment.
All right, thank you, sir. Is there anyone else in the audience who'd like to comment that supports the? Opposes the case being heard? With no further discussion, board members have anything else for staff?
I think that's a very good comment that was made about the 30%. That was my concern in my earlier questions, was in regard to how easy are we going to make it for these cases to be moved from an administrative to planning and zoning, and from planning and zoning to county commissioner. I think we need to take a look at that a little bit closer, see if there's any tweaking. Is there the possibility that if a case comes before us and we're getting a lot of opposition, that possibly we can just make a motion and have it go straight to county commissioners instead of having to make somebody go through an appeals process?
Okay, so I want to make sure I'm understanding. So I get what you're saying about, well,
There's a lot of
I get
opposition.
what, so you're looking for a mechanism for you to automatically kick it to county commission
Well, I'm
with a recommendation?
That's the question. My concern is that we are going to have situations where we do have a lot of opposition to a particular case. We're going to require them to go back through and get a 30% signatures of 30% of the people within 1,000 feet.
And the reason, to me, one of the reasons for that is if it doesn't meet the county's requirements, staff is either going to recommend denial, or, so we're trying not to, so I took the gentleman's statement as, and maybe I took this wrong, that if you have two adjacent property owners, then if one neighbor objects to it, then it's really easy to get it appealed. I get that. I'd rather have it be too easy to appeal than not easy enough to appeal, I think. We generally don't get a whole lot of cases. Generally, there's at least 5 or 6 adjoiners. Even when we do Carolyn's Pumpkin Patch, there's a few adjoiners. So it would take at least a couple of the neighbors opposing something. I guess I would just answer, I get where you're coming from, but I think what staff's trying to do is, because we do from time to time get cases that meet all the requirements that have a lot of opposition. So why, in my opinion, why should they have to go to county commission unless 30% of the adjacent property owners are willing to oppose that? Just because there's opposition, but it meets the rest of the county code?
Point taken.
But I'm happy to, if that's the will of the board, we're happy to go back and look at that.
Now, you know, honestly, you could dissect anything 100 times, but I think you're pretty well spot on. Over the years, Tom and I have been here quite a little while, there's probably 25 to 30% of the cases that would be able to be streamlined and not have to go through here. And the 30% deal, you know, I mean, it's very rarely, most generally, what's your average? Probably 6 to 10 letters go out?
Oh, no, I'd say it's more than that. I would say generally there's 20 to 30.
Oh, no kidding. You know, I mean, there isn't very many.
Like tonight's was 41, I think. And that's pretty rural.
Okay.
Because that case, this area was heavily developed back in the 70s with 3 to 5 acre lots. Now, the current code doesn't call for that, but yeah,
There's very few sparse areas in Clay County.
yes, it's mainly south, kind of down by the river, or if you go really far east. But I'd say generally we do 20 to 40 letters per case.
I'm also kind of inclined to think that I would rather make it more easy than less easy to appeal. It sort of, I think, dovetails into what another principle, guiding principle that we have when we hear cases, and that is that the burden of proof is upon the applicant. So I mean, it feels more consistent to make it more easy than less so. But maybe this is one of those cases, one of those situations I was talking about, where if, you know, we end up finding that there is, you know, this is not, it's maybe a little bit too hot or a little bit too cold, maybe it's not just right, but that we could see how many of those cases actually materialize. Because it would have to be a combination of few neighbors and controversy, which I don't know how often that comes up. I don't have near the history that anyone else around this table has.
We've had some 100% cases of opposition from the neighbors.
But generally speaking, those cases are the ones that are going to go to county commission anyway.
Right.
Now, I would say it's far and few between. I can probably count on one hand in my 8 years the number of cases that really met the code with no interior streets that we had a lot of opposition to. But this gives them the chance to, in those cases, they probably could get 30% of the adjacent properties pretty easy. Because generally, when there's that much opposition, they submit a petition anyway. You notice with the cell towers, you got a bunch of signatures on those. So I would think that 30% would be pretty easy for a lot of the cases. But that's just my opinion.
The 30% would need to be known within 7 days, is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, staff will do our best to educate. You know, we don't just help the applicants, we help the adjacent property owners too if they want to oppose something. So we'll do our best to educate them so they're starting that process early on if that's what it's going to look like.
So for instance, tonight's case, you said you sent out 41 letters, so they would have had to have had 12 signatures to oppose this, to get it to kick up.
I believe you. I'm not going to do that math in my head. I'm not very good with math. That sounds right to me.
12 kind of 30.
12, okay.
And
Decimals.
the revised letters that will be sent out, regular USPS, it's going to list this criteria in the letters, is that what I understood?
Well, we haven't drafted the letters yet because this isn't approved, but my inclination is that, yes, we give them, here's what they're doing, here's when you need your comments by, and here's the appeal process. And we would tell the applicant the same thing. If you want to appeal, here's what you have to do.
Okay. Okay. Well, regardless, I think we're going the right direction, and the gentleman that commented on the 30% has a good point, and as Mr. Nolte stated, not too hot, not too cold, and kind of ease our way into it, so. Is there any other discussion that the board members would have for staff? So, okay. Well, I would call for a motion on the amendments to the 2011 Land Development Code as presented by staff.
Move to approve.
Very well. Do we have a second?
Second?
Very well. Could we have a roll call vote?
David Rotis,
Yes.
Randall Morris,
Yes.
Brad Scarlett,
No.
Jerry Nolte,
Yes.
Mike Brinkley,
Yes.
Terry Griffin,
Yes.
Chairman Tom Decker.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Very well. I think that's the last of our cases or applications to be heard this evening. If got any manager's comments or advice from council?
I've just got a couple comments. The last month's meeting, which was cell tower, was denied by the county commission. Atlas, which was the subdivision with the trust company on it off 169, was approved by the county commission. And then we are working on the comp plan update with Olson Studio, and there is scheduled to be a joint Planning and Zoning Commission and County Commission kind of kickoff meeting for the comprehensive plan on October 25th. It is a Wednesday, October 25th at 6 p.m. Obviously, we would like everybody to be there, but if you can't, I get it, it's an extra meeting. But Wednesday, October 25th, 6 p.m. in the commission hearing room, and we'll send out notifications once we get a little bit closer. I think that's all I have.
That's going to be with the firm that's been hired to update the comp plan and the LDC, the county commission, and now you're inviting the Plan and Zoning Commission, is that correct?
Yes.
All right, very well.
And I guess I should, in case anybody's watching this, the shooting range is still withdrawn. There is no new application. It is not scheduled to be heard at any Planning and Zoning Commission meeting at this point. But the public is welcome to contact the Planning and Zoning Department.
Very well. Any additional comments from staff or board? All right, let's see. Meeting adjourned.
Well, that was fun. You know, there is about 20-25%.
No.